Okay, tonight's lesson is the first of the 7 deadly sins, anger. Does anybody remember from week 1 what the opposite of anger is? Lisa's running for her notes. Anybody remember the opposite?
Meekness.
What was that?
Forgiveness.
Meekness. Oh,
Nope,
forgiveness.
forgiveness. Forgiveness is the opposite of anger. And the symbol for anger is the bear. Picture a bear with its mouth wide open, showing its fantastic teeth, standing up on its hind legs with its claws out.
Mm.
That's our picture of anger. So our class is 7 deadly sins. So can you think of some examples of deadly anger? Anger
Sure.
that goes so far that
Murder.
results in bad
Yeah.
things.
Murder.
Okay, murder. What else?
Fighting, physically hurting somebody.
Mhm.
Oh, that's not deadly.
Actually, it could be. It could be because, somebody is fighting with someone else, throws them to the ground, they hit their head on a rock and the guy dies. That's
True.
manslaughter. That's caused by the anger that started in the first place. It started the fight, caused the murder
Right.
or the manslaughter.
Road rage.
Whatever.
Road rage could cause death,
Mhm.
not anger.
What about other anger that leads to maybe not physical death, but other forms of death?
Emotional
Maybe spiritual
abuse.
or emotional death.
Yeah. The tongue is the most powerful organ. Yes.
Weapon. Yes, weapon.
Yes.
Double-edged sword.
Yep. Okay. So we already talked about murder. So we have plenty of instances in our news lately of somebody walking into a crowd and shooting people. That's deadly anger. What would bring a postal worker to revisit their place of work and kill somebody?
Hurt
Don't say,
feelings.
don't say anything. Just think about it.
Oh,
What would put a teenager on the street in prostitution? What would send a college senior into a classroom with a random murder on their mind? What would cause a wife to take a knife to her husband? What would cause a young man to endanger life by driving a car at speeds exceeding 100 miles an hour? What would land business partners in court suing each other into bankruptcy? What would cause a person to live looking into a bottle at the end of every workday? Those are all forms of deadly anger, basically unresolved anger. And if you follow the breadcrumbs back into their history, what are you going to find in each of
Pain.
those situations?
pain. Hurt.
Pain. What kind of pain?
Emotional
Emotional.
pain.
Okay. All right. You'll probably find unresolved loss. Unresolved loss. Something important has been lost, or they've become powerless to get it back, to heal it, to fix it, to protect it. And because of that loss, they become angry. So what is at the root of anger then? If loss is part of it, what are we feeling that leads us to be angry?
I always
Grief.
thought it was fear, but
Unresolved
not pain.
and sadness too, I would say.
Yep.
Unforgiveness.
Unforgiveness. Okay. All right. So here's 3 things for us to think about.
Okay.
Anger is the emotion that tells us that we're not getting what we deserve. Anger is the emotion that our will is being blocked or frustrated. Anger is the emotion that we're losing something or someone that's important to us.
Can you repeat those again? I only have the first one. The emotion that tells us we did not get what we deserve.
Okay. The emotion
Listen.
that tells us we did not get what we deserve. It is the emotion that our will is being blocked or frustrated. It tells us, it's the emotion that tells us that our will is being blocked or frustrated. It's the emotion that tells us that we are losing someone or something that's important to us.
Or how about lost somebody or that? or
Losing,
something?
lost, either way,
Okay.
it all rolls together.
Okay.
All three of those things, though, involve us feeling out of control.
Okay.
We're not able to control what we want. We're getting blocked or frustrated in getting what we want. We've lost something and we have no control to get it back.
What about spiritual loss?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Do we get angry at spiritual loss?
Yeah,
Sometimes.
because it's like if you stop praying every day, or if you stop talking to the Lord, or if you stop working in His will and doing His work, I think that would definitely affect your spiritual.
Yeah, because you know something's missing, right?
Yep.
You know, we're all designed with a God-shaped hole in us, and if we don't have that filled with God, then we feel loss, and we can feel anger over that. So loss of power makes us angry. Unresolved anger is toxic, explosive, inflammatory, and destructive to us first, and then to others. It's like pouring acid into a plastic bottle. What happens to the poor bottle?
Melt.
It melts, and we melt. When we're angry, we have a meltdown, don't we?
Yep.
So picture that. You're having a meltdown. Anger destroys its container first, and its container is us. Now, does anger come in a variety of forms?
Yes.
What kind of forms does anger take?
Well, the first thing I
Frustration.
think of, the first
Okay,
thing I think of
frustration.
is don't sin in your anger. I always go back to that.
We are going to study that verse, yes. But what forms does anger take? So frustration, yeah,
Sadness.
okay, sadness,
Yeah, depression.
depression, mhm,
Hurt.
Anxiety.
hurt,
Anxiety.
anxiety,
Meanness.
okay, meanness. Okay, now we're starting to build up
Tired.
that anger a little bit more. Okay,
Hold on, when you're tired and when you're hungry.
okay. You're
Angry.
hangry,
Yes, no, seriously. If you're too exhausted, you cannot function, and like my brain just snaps at everything. You know
yeah.
what
So
I mean? Like,
it's the mixture between hungry and angry. You're hangry.
yeah, and then the same thing with being tired. It's like your brain, if you don't get enough sleep, can't process your emotions, and so you end up just. And I wish I could control that. But that would be my favorite thing to control.
They call
Right.
it halt in recovery. Hungry, angry, lonely, tired. Halt. You're supposed
Mm.
to halt if you're feeling any of those.
Okay. Well, here's some ways of thinking about anger. Resignation anger. Our esteem is shot. We've been hurt. You know, hurt me if you want, use me if you wish, trample on me. I'm resigned that nothing's ever going to be good. That is a form of anger.
So it's like
Pain is
giving.
pain is better than nothing. That's resignation anger. That's one form of anger. Believe it or not, that's anger. It's just taking a slightly different form. How about crockpot anger?
That's
Where it's-
I'm sorry, but that's the scariest of angers to me.
Which
That's the
one?
quiet
Crackpot?
one, right? No, the.
No, the
The resignation?
I feel like that's when people explode because they've shoved it down and haven't, addressed it so much that that's when they just do something totally off the wall, like go in and shoot somebody or, shoot up a school or whatever.
or commit suicide. Yes,
Yep.
it's going
Or
to be,
inflict it on themselves, yeah.
it's going to be deadly in some manner. There's crockpot anger. You know, the lid's on the pot still, but inside's bubbling and steaming away. And sooner or later, when the temperature gets right,
The wrong
something
person.
bad's going to happen, right?
Yep, usually.
It's just going to go whoosh.
Is that similar to pressure cooker anger? Because I always
Yep.
heard it as pressure cooker anger.
Yep, that's another way of looking at it. It's just building up steam inside, you know, and all it takes is one more straw.
That's a thinking straw that broke the camel's back.
Yep, the straw that breaks the camel's back. And it has nothing to do with that last straw. It's
they had-
what's all preceded it.
Mhm.
Then there's blaming anger. It's their fault. I'm the victim. They're to blame. Where the anger becomes everybody's out to get me. They're all my enemy.
Um,
Nobody likes me. Everybody hates me.
And then there's subtle controlling anger. I'll never let anybody do this to me again. So back off, you know, put up the warning sign, monster inside.
Oh, I know that one.
Me
What's that
too.
one called again?
Blaming anger.
Oh, I thought it was subtle controlling anger.
Oh, yes, yes, you're right. Subtle controlling anger.
Oh, okay, I was like, that doesn't, I don't blame,
Sorry.
but yes,
Sorry.
I'm subtly.
I've got them written down and they're close together. So
So subtle controlling anger. I know it's me. That's the nobody's gonna do that to me again.
that's right. That's right. You're not going to pull that on me again.
Oh my
So I'm
gosh.
going to get you first. Then there's random anger. I'm not responsible for what I do. No one cared that I got hurt. So why should I care that they get hurt?
What's that one again?
Random anger.
My pens keep dying. This is my third one.
Gotta get it
But
fixed.
everybody processes and deals with loss in different ways, loss of control in different ways. Some kind of internalize it and some externalize it. Some it boils slowly, some it boils fast. It takes many different forms. All right, so let's actually interject now what the Hebrew and Greek words are from the Bible for anger. Since we've sort of been talking about these different forms, you'll see that there's pictures of these forms in these words too. So the Hebrew terms, the most common one is just the two letters AP, app. It's the basic sense of snorting. Think of a bull. They're just snorting. They're angry. They may be pawing the ground. They're ready to take off and charge at you. So app. It's mostly used for divine anger, and we don't often think about divine anger, but 170 times in the Old Testament, this word's used for divine anger, and 40 times it's used for human anger. App, snorting. Second word is hema. Hema has a sense of heat or passion. And we talked about, you know, crockpot anger or powder keg anger or whatever, you know, heat, explosive, passionate anger.
How do you spell that?
HEMA. And this is
Please
used
spell
for,
them for me because I'm going back to look at it.
okay, this one's also used for divine anger 90 times in the Old Testament and 25 times for human rage. This one gets translated rage when it's applied to humans. And then there's another word, HARA, which is only used in the Old Testament for God's wrath. And it has other meanings like rage or indignation or chiding, you know, different facets of the idea of wrath. And then in the New Testament, we have four Greek words. The first one is zeo, Z-E-O. And this one means to boil with heat or be hot. It's used with water, obviously, but it's also used metaphorically for boiling anger. And it can also have the idea of zeal attached to it, which is a form of anger used in the right way. It's also used in the idea of a fervent spirit, which again ties to zeal. And then there's thumos, Thumos. This is passion, angry, heat, anger, boiling up, and then subsiding. Boiling up, subsiding. It also can mean to glow, to have ardor, the wine of passion, inflaming wine, referring to like a drunkard that's gone mad and kills himself, and all that. The whole idea of boiling up and then subsiding.
It subsides because they're dead, right? 'Cause-
Yeah, in that case, yeah.
yeah, okay.
And then this next one is a little odd. It's orgy, ORGE,
Oh, O-R-G-E.
which means upsurging of like sap in a tree or vigor.
What?
It has an impulsive nature to it.
Can you repeat that? It's what?
Orgy, ORGE,
Ogre.
ogre. Okay.
Sort of.
Ogre. All right. I'm
Oh.
mispronouncing it then.
No, you're pronouncing it fine. It just looks like ogre.
Okay. That's a better way to think about it. You'll remember it then.
So what does it mean then again? I'm sorry.
Upsurging, impulsive nature, anger, the natural disposition, temper or character, movement or agitation of the soul. Here we get the soul involved here. Impulse, desire, violent emotion. It can also mean wrath, indignation, anger exhibited in punishment, hence used for punishment itself. So that's that word. And then the last Greek word is paroxuno,
Yes.
Paroxuno. I'm probably not pronouncing these right, but
P-A-R-U-N-O.
Oxumuno. And it means to make sharp or sharpen, to stimulate, to spur on, to urge, to irritate, provoke, arouse to anger, to scorn, despise, provoke, make angry, to exasperate, or burn with anger.
Wow.
So even in the Bible, when it talks about don't exasperate your children, this is this kind of anger. Don't provoke them or arouse anger in them.
Exasperate.
All right, so those are the words.
Okay.
And we've talked about the deadly forms of anger. There are some undeadly forms of anger too. What do you think there? They might ultimately lead to some deadly anger, but what are some other things that might make somebody angry?
Oh, I was thinking of something.
Unkind words.
Mm-hmm.
Unfair.
Unsafe adults.
What?
Unsafe adults.
Right, like I was thinking, yeah, getting abused. would be
Abuse. Yeah, any kind of abuse.
That to me is deadly anger. I'm
It can
sorry.
definitely go there.
That's like
Deadly for the abuser.
that's what I mean. That's like not yeah, that's deadly.
It can
You
it
don't
can
wanna
be
go there.
it can be hidden anger though, in kids that affects adults that comes out in weird ways. How about school kids that are just not very nice?
bullies.
Bosses that are not fair.
Hmm.
Church that could have
Yeah.
helped you but didn't.
Hmm.
Roommate that should have told you what somebody else was saying but didn't.
I was gonna say
Being passive
government.
aggressive.
Yes. Yes.
What, Tanuja? I didn't hear you. I'm
Passive aggressive, she said.
sorry. Ah, yeah.
A person who should have stayed faithful but didn't.
Hmm.
people who didn't leave our stuff alone. Institutions that could have flexed, could have made it easier for us, but didn't, like your business that's giving you a hard time about your injury. Disease that could have landed someplace else, but didn't.
Mm,
Death that should have waited, but wouldn't. You know, somebody that died too early. We get angry.
mhm.
And remember, what the emotion tells us, that we're not getting something we deserve, that our will's being blocked or frustrated, or that we're lost someone or something that's important to us. Anger is like a flashing red light on our instrument panel. It says, pay attention, something's wrong. And the anger in the New Testament, the verse that Clarissa mentioned, the Bible has a very interesting 2-word command about anger. It says, be angry. But then it goes on, has a but after it. So let's look at that passage. Be angry, but. Let's see. I didn't write down which passage that was. I think it's Ephesians, isn't it? Ephesians 4:26-27, is that right? Forgot to write that one down. know the
Ephesians
passage.
4:26. Yeah. In your anger, do not sin. Do not let the sun go down while you are still angry.
That doesn't say but though.
No, we'll get that in another place. Read 26 and 27, 4:26 and 27.
Says in your anger, maybe no. Okay. In your anger, do not sin. Do not let the sun go down while you are still angry. And where's 27? I just pulled up 26. Give me 1 second.
That's
Mhm.
Ephesians.
If somebody else has it, go for it.
Should be right after it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I pulled it up differently. I'm on my phone, so it pulled it up like on Bible Gateway first instead of in the app. And do not give the devil a foothold.
Mm.
There we go.
Sorry,
All right.
I pulled it up at a different, like I pulled it up on a browser because I was Googling it and then opened up my app.
Got it.
So Paul tells us, be angry. Anger is a normal human emotion, but there's some things that we're not supposed to do with our anger. What are those
Yes.
3 things that we're not supposed to do with that anger?
Not
According to
act on it.
Ephesians.
Not
Okay.
act on it.
Okay,
Right.
what else?
Don't let the sun go down while you're still angry.
All right, so
Don't stay
don't
angry.
stay angry.
Mhm.
Don't remain, because it'll make
And don't let the devil get a foothold. Would that be the third?
Right. So don't let it become a case for allowing devil to come
Get
in and get at you. So Paul assumes we're going to be angry. But what matters is what we do with it and what we do about it. Okay? We can be angry without sinning. How do we move from just being angry to being sinful with our anger?
Acting on it
Okay?
impulsively.
Impulsivity, okay. What else? All right, I'll give you some
bitter, right?
instance-
No, you tell me.
Sorry, I'm trying to mute. I was gonna say something, but I want to hear what you have to say.
All right, here's five phrases for thought. When is anger sinful? When it rises too soon without reflection. In other words, it's a reaction instead of a response. We don't think about it, we just go and do something.
You act on your
Yeah, you just impulsively act on that anger. When the injury that awakens it is only apparent. In other words, it may be a miscommunication. It may be that we're seeing something through our lens and that's not how the other person is seeing it. So we take it out of context. We feel injury without intended injury. Does that make sense?
Mhm.
So we haven't taken time to figure out and think about where this action's coming from. And is that really in line with what that person would normally do? Or are they loving?
Anger.
And this is out of character?
Next problem.
Are they acting in their normal state of who they are? And not only that, are you judging their intent? Right?
Yeah.
Like,
Right.
And what are
Yes.
these things? What is the
These are when anger moves from just being a natural emotion to sinning.
Okay.
Third is when there's a disproportionate anger to the offense. In other words, it was some little dinky thing and we just blow it all out of proportion. Because then it's all about me.
make a mountain out of a molehill. Make a
Yeah.
I was thinking that.
And the fourth is when it's transferred from the guilty to the innocent. When we're angry at one person, but we take it out on somebody else.
Mm-hmm.
We
the
call that
fifth-
misdirected anger in my house.
Yep. And the fifth one is when it's too long protracted and becomes vengeful. In other words, we let it stew inside of us and we give the devil a foothold. Giving the devil a foothold is when we nurse and rehearse and just let the cause of the anger kind of percolate inside of us and keep going to the point that we have sat down at a table with the devil and the devil is now feeding us a boatload of garbage.
Making plans.
And we're taking in that boatload of garbage and getting just angrier and angrier. And we're starting to cross over into acting on it in inappropriate ways. So what matters is not that we're angry, but what we do with it and what we do about it. It's our attitudes. So we don't want to rehearse it and nurse it. We don't want to let it become the CEO of our perspective. In other words, we don't want anger to be the lens that we look at everything through. We don't want to become enemy-centered people. In other words, everybody we look at, we're angry at everybody because we haven't let go of the anger we had over one thing or one person or whatever, and acting upon it. So, yes. Let's go into Matthew 5, though, and see what Jesus says about anger. He discusses it in the context of Old Testament law, specifically the law about murder. So Matthew 5, verses 21 to 22. Somebody want to read that?
I have it. You said Matthew 5:21, right?
5, 21 to 22.
Yeah. So you have heard that it was said to the people long ago, you shall not murder, and anyone who murders will be subject to judgment. But I tell you that anyone who is angry with a brother or sister will be subject to judgment. Again, anyone who says to a brother or sister, Raka, is answerable to the court, and anyone who says, you fool, will be in danger of the fire of hell.
All right. So there's a lot of stuff behind those phrases that we need to dig into. So the consequences of anger escalate in this passage. You see that? First you're liable to judgment, then you're liable to the courts, then you're liable to the fires of hell.
Mm.
Okay, so there's an escalation there. So the first point Jesus makes is that anger is an emotion that we can be liable for, that we can become accountable for. Because what we do with it. So we want to be careful that we're angry, but it doesn't move over into sin. So that's the first step. We can be liable for anger if we reside in it too long or start to act on it, leave it unresolved, where it becomes toxic and explosive and inflammatory and destructive and all of that stuff. So that's level one. Hopefully we can see the red flag and stop there. Because the second one is when it becomes an insult. The word raka. If you pronounce the word raka right, you have to kind of spit from the back of your throat. So it's raka. It's a bad word.
Mountain
to
out of a
use.
molehill.
It's a bad word to use. So anger begins with an emotion to something that's been done to us or whatever, but now we have an attitude about it. We've slept on it. We've woken with it. Paul says, don't let that happen. And now we hold the other person or the situation in contempt, and we move out to hurt them. We pass judgment on them in our court of what is reasonable anger. We let it, fester inside of us until it becomes, okay, I'm going to get even. I'm going to hold judgment against the other person. That's the next step.
Vindictiveness.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. It's taking it the next step. It's acting on it and in vengeful, attitudinal stuff. And then Jesus says the final one is when anger becomes destructive, a destructive deed. It's the word there for you fool is Nabal. And in the Bible days, this was the word for curse. So, the Bible, we get a lot
Like
of blessings.
Abigail.
Yes. In the
Like
Bible, we
Abigail.
get in the Bible, we get a lot of blessings, and we also have the curses. Well, this is the curse side. This is a curse that's invested with the power to destroy. So we've moved from just wanting to kind of hurt somebody to destroy them with a curse assigned to them that they would end up in a trash heap of godlessness, because there's that idea behind there. And when it says we're liable to the fires of hell, the word there is Gehenna. Gehenna was in the valley of Hinnom. It was called Gehenna. This was where in the old times, in the Old Testament, the Amorites had sacrificed babies to their gods in this valley. And other bad things had happened in this valley. And so in Jesus' day, this valley was the city dump. And everything was thrown there, including dead bodies, etc. Ones that didn't get buried. In fact, usually if anybody was crucified or punished by death or anything like that, their bodies would end up there. Thankfully, that's not where Jesus' body went. But this is where dead bodies would be, the trash would be, there'd be constant worms and flies and all of that buzzing around, but there'd also be a constant fire going to try to burn up the nastiness. So hell is pictured as Gehenna. And when somebody was cursing somebody, they were cursing them to the trash heap of godlessness, the idea of cursing them to hell. And if we start moving to that point, we are in danger of hell ourselves. A place where the worms never die and the fire never stops burning. Everything worthless is taken there and left. So has anger ever reached that level for you? Or have you seen it reach that level for somebody else?
Yes, me, I'm rage anger.
Yeah, it's a bad one. Destructive.
Yeah, I've had cops
Mabel?
call me before, so.
There are many that I could
I've-
choose from in that list. Not as much anymore, but yes, many.
Yeah, no, I have rage anger and I've gotten better, but yeah, there's been a couple of situations where I could have like hurt somebody or hurt myself or said something and you know what I mean? But the Lord had me in his hands, so that's all that matters at this stage of my life.
Mm-hmm.
Just in the past, it's not something I have to worry about anymore.
Well, let's think about it from a not quite as big a picture as I just described to you. Let's look at the 3 steps that Jesus gave us in a simpler way, just to remind us when we get angry. First step is it's an emotion that we need to be aware of and deal with properly. Second step, we've gotten an attitude. We've comped an attitude, and that attitude's starting to come out of us. And the third step is we want to do something destructive to the cause of our anger. So a destructive deed. So emotion, attitude, destructive deed. And Jesus says, stop it when it's an emotion and it hasn't crossed into sin. So anger, it can go inside of us or it can come out of us, right? So there's inward or outward anger. We've already talked about what outward anger looks like, right? It can be road rage, yelling, screaming at other people, putting your fist through a wall, going into a workplace and shooting somebody. It could take many forms. What about inward anger? What does that look like?
Makes you sick.
Makes you sick, but what else? How else might it manifest itself?
Self-loathing,
Okay.
where you just
What
hate
else?
yourself, depression.
Depression, there's a good word. Yeah. What else? What else do human beings do when they internalize anger?
Cut
Can it,
themselves.
Cut themselves?
Isolate.
doesn't it cause disease like cancer and other type of diseases, and you more susceptible to those?
Yeah, it can cause all kinds of physical things.
Like ulcers.
Obsessiveness and worrying, biting fingernails, cutting yourself, eating yourself to death, or not wanting to eat. Either way, letting other people use you, your body, or you in any other form. Shutting yourself in, not letting anybody else in. Suicide. Inward, it manifests itself, even though the person's not like striking out. It's still manifesting itself. You ever seen the Dead Poets Society? That movie?
Love Robin Williams. That is one of the greatest movies. Oh, Captain, my Captain. Sorry.
It's about a college student named Neil. He wanted to major in the arts, but his father wants him to go into the family business, and he's very domineering and represses him and tells him it's foolish to forget about drama, forget about all that stuff. But instead, Neil tries out for a play, gets a leading role, does fabulous in it. But he's torn between pleasing his father and following his dream. And his father finds out that he's done this play and this lead role, and instead of saying nice things, he puts him down and he tells him to go home and just forget about it. And Neil decides, after this tongue lashing late at night, to sneak out of his and into his father's office and take his father's gun, and he kills himself.
Hmm.
This is anger turned inward. It feels like there's no place it can go with it. It's not hurting somebody else, but it's definitely hurting the person. But there's actually a third option. And this is the option Christians should take. We take our anger Godward.
To God.
Mhm. Be angry, tell God about it. Be angry, don't sin. Be angry, vent heavenward. God specializes in recycling trash, and anger is trash if it's not recycled by God. Think about it. God takes the smoldering, worm-eaten trash of our lives and converts it into something useful. Turns it into reconciliation, justice, peace. And even anger is not discarded by God. He's able to redeem it. He redeems it for his purposes. Being a Christian doesn't eliminate anger, it converts it and transforms it. Think about it. Could it be that anger, if we yield it to God and let him shape it and direct us, becomes the passion for redeeming our world? We take that anger and turn it into something positive. We take anger about people being abused and we help abused people. We, we use that anger. What did Jesus do with his anger?
Took it to God.
Mm-hmm.
Prayed about it.
He flipped over the tables in the temple.
Oh,
Mhm.
yeah. He did that too.
Yep. Yep. Yep.
Well, I think the other big thing too is that knowing we can be angry with God and that's okay. That, we can put that anger at God and be angry at him and he will redeem it and make it something that's so beautiful that you're thankful for the, redemption, because he redeemed everybody, right?
Mhm.
So who better to be able to deal with it than God? Because I went through a lot. When I had my miscarriages, I used to yell at God all the time. But because he could take it and he knew my heart and he knew what was to come and the blessings that I had coming forward.
Mhm. Mhm.
And I think it almost made him laugh.
He has a good sense of humor. Yeah. So think about it though. Jesus saw the world at its worst. He saw people destroying each other that he loved. He looked heavenward to his Father and asked, "What do you want me to do with this? All this stuff that's there." And the Spirit moved him to act. He couldn't casually just observe the world gone wild. He came to earth to correct the problem. Anger over sin's destructiveness in the world is part of what brought Jesus to our world to save it. Some other examples of anger turned positive. William Wilberforce, say that fast a few times. William Wilberforce. He was a gentleman in England many years ago that he just couldn't stomach slavery anymore. And he turned it heavenward and said, "God, what do you want me to do with this?" And he was instrumental in stopping slavery in England. Susan B. Anthony couldn't stomach alcohol abuse anymore. What did she do? Martin Luther King couldn't stomach any more racial prejudice. What did he do? Nelson Mandela couldn't stomach any more apartheid. What did he do? When we figure out what's in our craw, when we figure out what makes us angry, if we won't be on the verge of discovering, then we won't be, I'm not saying it right. Then we'll be on the verge of discovering what our passion is that God can redeem into an action. So figure out what it is that really makes you angry and let God turn it into a redeeming anger to help our world. Maybe it's to help there be less poverty. Maybe it's like Glow, provide food for people. Maybe it's less discrimination, less character assassination, less abuse, less divorce, less pain, whatever it is. What does it makes you angry? Neglected children, religious frauds, battered wives, people that cheat, whatever it is. Don't swallow your anger anymore. Find your godly given passion that makes you angry. And don't waste that anger. Recycle it. Let God use it. God's watching us. He sees when we get angry. And he wants us to stop throwing rocks at others or stoning ourselves. He wants us to recognize the pain and redeem it for good. But only God can do this. So our anger has to turn heavenward and be redeemed. It's gotten pretty quiet. So I'm going to end it here so the people that watch this can sort of stew on that and come up with their own responses. And then we're going